Hi, this is Brett Ingram, entrepreneur and award-winning product creator. Today, I want to share with you why adversity can actually be a gift. So no one likes to struggle, right? Nobody likes to have any kind of a setback or feel as though they have a challenge that they have to work through that they weren't expecting. And it's something that is frustrating, and it's something that is demoralizing at times and things like that, because we all would love to be able to just run our business like business as usual every single day, have all the lights turn green, and have everything that we want to work the first time and work right out of the box, so to speak. But unfortunately, that's just not how things work. You know, adversity is just part of life, and it's certainly part of business. So in addition to our daily lives and whatever kind of adversity and challenges and struggles, setbacks we might have there, in business, obviously, it's also a situation where, because we're trying to do something that is so difficult, by its very definition, there are going to be challenges. There's dynamism in business. There's dynamism, economically and in the world in general. So basically, when we're trying to build a business, we can expect change, we can expect challenge, we can expect all of those kinds of things. And it's especially true if your goal is to set out to do something that's great. You know, if you have a large dream, the bigger the dream, the bigger the challenges, right? And the bigger the struggles that you're going to have, but also the greater the accomplishment. And in that one element of it makes it really, really nice. But regardless, the point is that there is no other way around it. We are all going to have to deal with adversity at some point in some fashion. Some of us more than others, some of us more than our share, maybe. And, but that is just a reality. And it can be very frustrating. But the interesting thing is that it can also be a paradox, because it can also be a gift. When I was starting off my latest, my digital business and my software business, one of the things that I was doing is I was already working full time. I didn't have a business to run at the time, and the only income I had was from my full-time job. I was married, I had a family, I had a mortgage and car payments and all these other things, and I was going to graduate school at night. And so I had very little time. I was actually going to school all day Saturday as well. So I had like an hour in the morning, an hour at night, and if I stayed up really late and got no sleep, then I could afford to work on my business. But I knew that I needed to find a way out of what I was doing because I wanted to build a better life. And so basically, I was working tirelessly every spare minute that I had. And for the first couple of months, what I was doing was learning. I didn't know anything about the industry. I didn't know anything about digital business or, any of that kind of stuff. I had a background somewhat in entrepreneurship. I had owned a brick and mortar business, and I had always been entrepreneurial my whole life, but I had no idea about this whole digital business thing. It was all brand new. The internet wasn't what it is today. Websites were fewer and further between, but there was certainly a web presence. And so I was learning, and I was what I was doing is I was storing all the information that I had and all of sort of the little nuggets that I was able to glean out of what I needed to do to build this and to grow it successfully on a zip drive. I had a portable little zip drive, and so I could take it with me to work. I was using it at home. I had it at school on the computers there. And so I was using it everywhere, and I just kept adding sort of data to it. And I had a file where I was tracking my own progress and making like a list of the steps that I needed to follow. But I was still pretty much in the learning phase because there was so much to learn. And every time I unpacked something, I found actually there was even more to learn. And so as I started to understand it and I started to put it all together, I started to write. What I decided to do was, for one of my initial products, I was going to make an ebook that was going to be about starting a digital business, where I was going to put all the information that I had learned into one ebook and essentially create that and use that as a giveaway and then sell it or whatever if I could do that. And so I had thousands and thousands of pages of information, not that I all wrote, that I bookmarked and that I downloaded and stuff like that. And I had pages and pages of notes that I had made for myself with steps that I was going to follow and all the things I needed to do. And I had the start of the ebook that I was creating. So I had, written out a bunch of it. I was formatting it in chapters, and I was really excited about, what I was going to be able to do, but I hadn't really gotten that far in terms of getting stuff done. But I had my whole brain about digital marketing on this one little zip drive. So I was going into school, and I went to graduate school in New York City. So traditionally what I would do is I would bolt out of the office at the end of the day, and I would zip down to the train station, dump my car at the train, jump on the train, go into the city, and then pick it up when I got back. And that's what I did almost every time. A couple times, I could count them on one hand, I actually had to drive into the city because I was running late. And this was one of those days. I was on the phone with my boss. I couldn't get out of the office in time. And so I ended up having to drive into the city. And I said, whatever. So I drove into the city. And as I was parking my car, I actually picked deliberately this street with very bright street lights. And I picked an area where I felt the car was going to be very safe. It wasn't a fancy car or anything like that, but I had a briefcase, an attaché case, and I normally brought that with me to class. And on this particular day, I was running so late, I was a bit in a panic. I locked the car and I just ran in and I left it in the back seat. So I go to class, and then I go through the break and everything else, and class ends, and it's about 9:00. So I come out at night, and I'm walking down to the car, and I see out of sort of the reflection of the light something that looks a little bit off. As I get a little bit closer, what I realize is someone has smashed my back window and stolen the briefcase, the attaché case, out of the back seat. Now, the attaché case had nothing in it of value, really, because it was a nice case, but it just had a little bit of paperwork and stuff. But it had the zip drive with months worth of work. There was no cloud storage, so it had everything. It had all of my documents, it had all of my information, it had the ebook that I was writing. It had literally the entire business that I had stayed up nights, got up early in the morning, went into the office early in the morning, worked on for months to get it to this point, all gone. So I frantically ran around, the corner, and I looked at, in the bushes around where I was, and in the, in the garbage cans. I thought maybe when whoever took it got around the corner and realized that there was nothing of value in there, then what they would do is they would dump it, and hopefully I'd be able to recover it. No luck. I looked around. I didn't see any sign of the attaché case anywhere. And so I was completely devastated because this was all of this work that I had put together. And so I sort of moped back to my car, and I sort of duct taped up the window a little bit or something so I could drive home. And on my ride home, I remember the feeling of despair and the feeling of total depression because I had to question everything at that moment. I had to wonder, was the idea of even doing this thing a good idea? Or maybe I should just stick with getting my degree and getting a job the way that I was going to and stay on the normal course. Because I had worked so much to put this all together and then it was all gone. I mean, I'd have to start over. I had a little bit of knowledge in my head, of course, but I mean, I would have had to start it all over, and I had very few hours to work each given day. So as I'm driving home, I'm thinking to myself, is this a sign? Am I not supposed to be doing this? Maybe this is telling me just stick with what you need to do. And it took me a couple of days to really process it and to go through it and to actually come out the other side. And I went through a full gamut of emotions, and I went through a full gamut of ideas and thoughts. And I was trying to figure out what I should do, what my next step should be from there. And what I ultimately decided to do, as you may have guessed, is I picked up the pieces, I started over, and I started going. And, the one thing about it is, about adversity, is as devastating as that moment was, once I was able to step back from it a little bit and sort of take stock of everything, the one thing about it is that it made me decide. It made me make a decision about how important this was to me. Did I really want this? Because if I did, I was going to have to redo all of this work that I had already done. That's a lot of stuff to go through. That's a lot of resolve to pick up the pieces and start over. It's not like it was just hard work. It was reworking all the stuff I had already done. And that's really difficult to do. And it made me decide whether or not I was going to do that. It also made me take action, right? Because once I decided that yes, I was going to do this, I had to get off my butt and get moving. I had to start working again. I couldn't be depressed. I couldn't wallow in my, woe is me sorrow. I had to pick up the pieces and get moving. It also helped me clarify, right? Because in that moment of decision where you're deciding, do I stay the course or do I change it up, or, what do I do here? It clarifies how important something is. It clarifies the value something has to you. Because when you go through that adversity and you're trying to figure things out, you're gonna figure that out. If it doesn't matter, you're gonna give it up. You're gonna say, whatever. I'll just let the adversity beat me on this one because I got better things to do. I'm gonna pursue other actions, and sometimes that's the right decision. It doesn't mean we always have to, make the hardest decision possible, but it makes us take stock of it. It makes us rethink. It sharpens our resolve. Because you can bet that once I decided I was going back in to do it again, I said, there's nothing that's going to stop me. I'm going to do this. If I'm going to do it once, I'm going to do it twice. I'm going to do it till it works. So it sharpens our resolve. It also deepens our commitment. Because at that moment, we have to decide, how committed to this are we? Nobody wants to bang their head against the wall over and over and over again. So if I didn't feel totally committed to the cause, I would have given up or I would have moved on to something else. And I would have seen that as a reason to do that. But instead, it deepens commitment. And it forces us to look at things differently and to shake it up, right? I was going. And what I was doing is I was learning a lot. But I wasn't actually producing a lot. I wasn't taking a lot of action. Now, there's nothing wrong with learning. We all have to go through that phase in anything new that we do. But at the end of the day, nothing gets done until we start to take action, until we start to do something. And in that moment, what I realized is it was a new opportunity. It was an opportunity for me to look at this in a different way. And instead of spending so much time learning, I wanted to get stuff done. Because I realized I lost all this other information. I wasn't going to go back and spend another 3 months collecting all the information again, if I could even find it. What I was going to do is just get moving. So I took what I remembered, I took what I knew, I started over and I kept moving. And so it caused me to look at it differently. Instead of feeling like, oh, well, I have all this time, and now time was really important to me. Time was scarce. Time was a priority because not only did I have so little of it, but I had lost so much now, I wanted to make up for all of that lost time. So I got really aggressive from an action standpoint, and I got really focused. So it causes us to shake it up and look for new solutions and new paths and new breakthroughs for whatever it is that we're trying to figure out. And so, through that story, despite the fact that I'd never wanted to deal with that adversity, and it was frustrating and devastating and heartbreaking and all of those emotions that I ran through in that moment, I eventually came back to the same realization that I had to make it work. And so I was even more committed, and I even felt stronger about it. And I used that anger that I felt to empower me to work. So I would focus, and so I would work hard, and so I would get stuff done. And I started to develop a chip on my shoulder, like, you're not going to stop me. I don't care what happens. I'm going to make this work, and I'm going to keep going. And I think, that is a really important lesson about the adversity when we work through it. If it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger, right? That's the old saying. Well, in this particular case, it's exactly the situation. So obviously I stuck with it. and I was able to build my digital marketing business. And so I'm super grateful ultimately for all of those opportunities and for going through all of that, because I don't know how the path would have worked otherwise. Just recently, I actually ran into a situation where I was, email marketing is one part of the business that I run. And it's always been a very stable and very strong and important part of my business. And so I ran into a situation where, again, I had adversity. It's not like I had built this business and now all of a sudden everything is daisies and roses and rainbows. The fact is, adversity keeps rearing its head. And we have to keep making those decisions, and we have to keep working through it if we want to stay the course. And so for me, when my email marketing all of a sudden almost literally dried up overnight, I was sending out messages and getting clicks and opens and all that results and all that stuff and making sales and commissions. And then all of a sudden, literally on an almost overnight basis, within the course of about a week, it dropped to about 10% of what I was doing. And again, I was, super frustrated, super, upset about it. And I again had to make a decision. What am I going to do here? How am I going to figure this out? And so what I ended up doing was I ended up learning all about how email marketing works, how the deliverability works, how internet service providers evaluate messages, all of the various rules and all the various tweaks that we can make when we're doing our marketing and setting up our lists to make things more effective. And, the irony and the interesting part of the situation is what I ended up doing was taking all the email stuff that I had, developing a process that really optimized it all. And so what I was able to do is actually create a situation where the email marketing stuff that I was doing, I didn't even realize at the time because it was working, so I just left it alone. I just kept doing what I was doing. I never challenged it. I never looked at it. I never evaluated it. I just said it ain't broke, so I'm not going to fix it. I just let it go. And then once it broke, I was forced to look at it. I was forced to evaluate it. I was forced to learn. And what I realized is I had so many things that weren't optimized in my email marketing method that had I just done that 6 months or a year or 2 years ago, I would have been so much better off. Because after going through all of that adversity, and it took me a couple of months to not only figure out what to do, but to get things back on track and to get them back. But the fact is, I've been able to build it back to not only the level it was at, but better. And it's more protected against future issues because now I understand what it is that caused the problems in the first place. So again, it's the way that we look at it. It's the way that we approach the issues that we run into, not the fact that we have the issue at all. And so in that particular case, same type of deal. I could have said, well, this is never going to work. It crashed on me. It used to work. Now what do? I guess I move on to something else. But instead, I dug in and I said, no, I know that this thing works. Something must have happened. I'm going to figure out what that was. I'm going to solve that problem. And I'm going to make sure that I protect against it happening again. And I was able to do that by learning about how it all works. And it was stuff that I didn't understand and didn't know. So now, not only is it going really well, but I also have confidence that I'm protected against future issues. And even if new things arise, I will be able to solve them because I've already done it. And so, the best thing about that is I ultimately am getting better results now than if I never had the issue. So if that adversity had never popped up, if the email had never stopped or shut down or ground to a halt, I would still be going blindly about what I was doing, making far less than what I need to be doing and being far less effective than I need to be because I never would have looked at it. So that's why adversity can be a gift if we look at it in the right way. So the takeaway here is that struggles, setbacks, challenges, and adversity are all part of life and part of business. As much as we don't like them, paradoxically, they can present a tremendous opportunity to grow and evolve. Because in times of adversity, we're forced to make decisions, take action, and change the way we think to solve problems. So instead of fighting against having adversity, which is inevitable anyway, if we embrace it and work through it, we can come out stronger, tougher, and ultimately more successful.